spring in America. There have been countless springs like this. The freezes are over. The days are longer and warmer. Trees have regained their leaves. Flowers are blooming. The crops are in the ground. And school children are looking forward to the summer vacation. In May 1953, America was experiencing a metaphorical spring, a spring of historic proportions. The Great Depression had been wiped away as America became the arsenal and the breadbasket of democracy in World War II. Over 15 million men and women joined the armed forces. That epic struggle ended in victory, and those millions who served returned to civilian life, completing their educations under the GI Bill, marrying, and starting the baby boom. Since much of the world's industrial and agricultural capacity was destroyed during the war, American industry and agriculture are thriving as they meet pent-up demands for food, shelter, consumer goods, industrial and transportation to rebuild the world economy. It is in this environment that we begin our story. A story of one man's vision in establishing a business that has not only survived, but that has also grown and prospered for 6 decades in the face of no little adversity. A story of a family, a community, and an industry bound together by common goals, mutual respect, and goodwill. It is, in many respects, a truly and uniquely American story. Ray Noonan was born and raised in Chicago. His family had a farm near Cascade that he visited in his childhood. In 1939, he graduated from college in Davenport, Iowa, with a degree in philosophy. In the Depression, jobs were scarce, and there weren't a lot of prospects for philosophers, even in the best of times. So, he raised turkeys on the family farm. That was interrupted by the onset of World War II. Ray joined the Navy, became a lieutenant, and served as a communications officer on destroyers in the Atlantic. Before shipping out to officers' candidate school, Ray attended a Christmas party with a buddy. There he met Mary Sweeney, his friend's cousin, and they began a long-distance wartime romance. In 1947, Ray and Mary were married in Chicago and moved to Manchester, Iowa. Ray worked as a manufacturer's representative for a company that made agricultural supplies. Their first child, Ray Noonan Jr., was born in 1948. Unable to find housing in Manchester that would allow pets or children, Ray and Mary moved to Cascade. For a couple of years, Ray and a partner ran their own business in the nearby community of Monticello. But Ray soon decided that he should be in business on his own. He would often say, "If I'm going to go broke, I'd just as soon do it by myself." Interestingly, he decided to go into the lumber business, a business he knew nothing about, but a business he considered one of the 3 basic industries of food, shelter, and clothing. Ray and Mary named that business Cascade Lumber Company. Ray possessed an uncanny talent for judging people. Among the first hires at his new company were Harry Thomas, Denny Leib, Ray Mengi, and Bob Takis. The last 3 stayed with Cascade for decades, becoming part of its DNA. Harry Thomas had recently retired as a lumberyard manager and had moved to Cascade. Ray convinced Harry to come out of retirement to become a manager, mentor, and the very first employee of Cascade Lumber. Ray had also been taken under the wing of a community banker in Cascade, a relationship that proved to be advantageous to an entrepreneur with little capital. A startup loan was closed with a handshake. Cascade Lumber opened on May 19, 1953, on what Ray called a frog pond at the east edge of Cascade. Cascade Lumber was a fledgling retailer of lumber and building materials. Ironically, Ray missed that first day of business as he was with Mary while she delivered their second son, Mike. The ether used as an anesthetic in childbirth in those days made Ray sick, so he spent the rest of the day in bed. From day 2 of Cascade Lumber and on, Ray Noonan was an innovator, always looking to try something new. He realized early on that there were limitations to how much profit could be made selling commodity building materials, and saw additional profits in value-added finished products. So Ray began to manufacture feed bunks and feed wagons, hay racks, portable livestock buildings, and more. In the early 60s, Ray read an article about roof trusses. He found a split ring and bolt connecting system that allowed the construction of trusses strong enough to span the then unheard of length of 40 feet, perfect for cattle and machine sheds. Quickly embraced by area farmers, these large trusses were built in the Cascade parking lot. Too long to fit on the trucks of the day, the trusses were knocked down and trucked in pieces to the construction site, where they were reassembled and erected into cattle and machinery storage buildings. Being an innovator, Ray would often move on to another new idea while the last one was still developing. Fortunately, he had surrounded himself with good people who could and would take the initiative to see a project through while he turned his attention to the next innovation. Denny Leib was one of those good people. Denny saw big opportunities in the truss business and gradually eased into day-to-day operational responsibility. Cascade then built its first truss plant in 1962 and then leaped a couple of generations of technology by manufacturing trusses with nailed metal plate connectors in sufficient volume to begin distributing them through the area lumber yards. Because some of those retailers were reluctant to buy from Cascade Lumber, a retail lumber yard and a competitor, Ray created Cascade Manufacturing Company as the name of the business unit for truss manufacturing and sales to lumber yards. This facilitated the growth of the truss distribution business throughout eastern Iowa. Bob Takis became the one-man fleet driver, handling all of the Cascade Manufacturing Company deliveries, many of which were to difficult-to-reach sites, requiring considerable ingenuity. During the 70s, Ray decided it was time to add carpet and floor coverings to the inventory at Cascade Lumber and distribute them to other lumber yards, following the strategy that was working well with trusses. Ray Mengi stepped up to the plate to manage that business. Then, to support and grow its building materials and truss manufacturing businesses, Cascade started Circle C Buildings, which were a line of commercial and agricultural post-frame buildings sold through a network of sales reps in several eastern Iowa communities. Into the late 70s and early 80s, the market for trusses continued to grow as rural Iowa communities and farmers prospered. In response, Cascade built a 30,000 square foot truss plant during the winter of 1979 and 1980. But no business, no matter how successful, exists in a vacuum. In the 1980s, there was an economic crisis in agriculture. Land values fell, credit dried up, and construction ground to a halt. Cascade's agriculture-driven businesses suffered greatly. By this time, Ray and Mary's family of 5 children had grown up, completed their educations, and were involved in the family business. 2 generations of Noonans and their key employees put their heads together and decided to expand. Since there wasn't enough demand in eastern Iowa to support their production capacity, perhaps there would be in the entire state. So they decided to build on their heretofore successful model of truss distribution through independent lumber yards and expanded their market to all of Iowa. In 1989, at 72 years of age, Ray Sr., as he was then called, decided it was time to retire and turn over business operations to the second generation of his family and non-family management team. Ray Sr. was immediately elected the first chairman of the board of Cascade Lumber Company. Continued growth of Cascade Manufacturing eventually led to the establishment of an engineered lumber distribution yard in 1992. In 1997, the company founded Monticello Carpet and Interiors at 108 East 1st Street in Monticello, as Cascade had successfully pulled back from wide area wholesale distribution of floor coverings and was now concentrating on local sales and installation. On the morning of Sunday, January 5th, 1997, a fire destroyed the Cascade Manufacturing Complex built in 1979. The 30,000 square foot truss plant and 8,500 square foot office building were a complete loss. jeopardizing the jobs of 100 people in a community of just 1,800.
There's no doubt we will rebuild here in Cascade.
Cascade Lumber Vice President Pat Noonan quickly extinguished fears created by this fire. Noonan says his 135 employees still have jobs. He says it's a reflection of the company's devotion and heart.
It's our life. It's our life. My life's business, my family's life's business, and just the dedication we have to the component industry.
Now, the retail division of Cascade Lumber Manufacturing did not sustain damage and remains fully operational. It's the Truss building here that sustained the most damage and is a total loss.
But the $2 million loss was mitigated by good news. No one was hurt, and the loss was covered by insurance. The financial records were smartly and safely stored off-site. IT vendor LumberMate had 2-day-old backups of all of Cascade's pricing, engineering, design, and bid documents for current work, and all delivery trucks were saved. The sales force and local media went into action and notified customers in the community that Cascade Manufacturing was still in business. All obligations would be met, no layoffs were planned, and rebuilding would begin immediately. Offers of help poured in from employees, neighbors, customers, suppliers, and even competitors. The good people of Cascade happily went about the task of rebuilding. And life continued on with Ray and Mary, insisting that the Noonan grandchildren go to church on that Sunday. Temporary offices were set up by the end of the day, and 48 hours after the fire, Ray Jr. signed an agreement to lease 128 hours of the 168 hours in a week from a nearby truss plant. The agreement called for Cascade workers to staff the plant from 3:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday and around the clock on weekends. That schedule put enormous stress on the Cascade workers. So, 1 month later, Cascade bought the equipment and leased the building of a competitor's surplus 25,000 square foot truss plant in Eldridge, Iowa. Cascade eventually purchased that plant in 1998 and operated it for 10 years. Shortly before the fire, Cascade had signed an agreement with Alpine Engineered Products Truss Steel Division to become the exclusive truss steel manufacturer in its territory. After the fire, Alpine agreed to give Cascade additional time to initiate the program. Within a year of the fire, Cascade Manufacturing began making truss steel trusses on its wood truss equipment. Meanwhile, Cascade rebuilt its 8,500 square foot central office building and an adjoining 32,000 square foot truss plant, replacing the buildings lost in the fire. Moving on to the 21st century, Cascade continued to grow. In 2002, the wood truss plant moved to a 36,000 square foot facility on 28 acres so the plant at 107 Madison could be converted to make steel trusses. To meet growing demand for trusses outside its initial eastern Iowa market, in October of 2004, Cascade broke ground for Phase 1 of a wood truss plant on 27 acres in Pleasantville, Iowa, near metropolitan Des Moines. Phase 2, a rail siding and lumber distribution yard, was completed in 2007. In 2005, Cascade decided that it was time to begin a 5-year project to update its entire IT system with a team led by third-generation Noonan family member Joel Althoff. Just 2 years later, the project was completed. So the question was, what do we do with this incredible IT team and its state-of-the-art technology? The answer? Offer it to outside clients. Thus, in 2007 was born another successful Cascade business, Infrastructure Technology Solutions. ITS offers IT products and services to educational, healthcare, senior care, retirement facilities, and other small businesses throughout the state of Iowa. What do the next 60 years hold for Cascade Lumber and its affiliates? Ray Noonan Sr. had an uncanny ability to sense where the winds of change were blowing, to be in the right place at the right time. He was always willing to take a step in a new direction while keeping the other foot firmly grounded on the successes of the past. While it is no easier to predict the future in 2013 than it was back in 1953, it seems certain that Cascade will continue to seek new opportunities for steady and manageable growth while remaining grounded in the lessons of the past. That growth will be determined to a great extent by the economy of the land in which Cascade is rooted, Iowa and neighboring states. As family farms give way to larger corporate operations, farms of any size still require buildings. That will be an important segment of Cascade's business. The area's cities will grow, and even in predominantly agricultural areas, there will be demand for housing to replace older homes or to accommodate population growth. As always, Cascade will continue to cherish its good employees and to diversify and offer those employees new opportunities. The future of Cascade is firmly rooted in the past, in the principles laid down by Ray Noonan Sr. that are adhered to today. Principles that include faith and family, honesty and integrity, respect and trust.